Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and before we get started on tonight's story, I want to let you know about Makeship. MrCreepyPasta, as a cyborg, is currently available on Makeship. You can be able to order him now, and only for the next couple of days. You can find more through the link in the description down below. Or you can head over to Makeship.com. And if you order him now before Monday, you can get 10% off your order. And now, on to tonight's story. My roommate Paulette had become my best friend over the few months that we shared our college dorm. She'd helped me to come out of my shell a bit, inviting me to any get-togethers that she went to, and even forcing me to some if I was hard-headed about getting out for some fresh air. She had made me feel welcomed and wanted, honestly, which is something I didn't experience growing up as an orphan who hopped from foster home to foster home. I'd never had any biological family reach out to me or made any connections with the families I briefly lived with. So, feeling welcome was something that I had always craved. I wasn't shocked whenever she invited me to her family's Thanksgiving dinner. She'd been telling her family about me for a while, even having phone calls where she would put it on speaker and have them talk to me, something I was pretty awkward with. They did really sound like nice people, and I knew if I stayed at the dorm, I'd just be sad thinking about everyone else getting to spend time with their families. I thought it would be a nice distraction, even though I knew I'd probably spend the whole time making awkward small talk. So Paulette and I piled up into her Toyota Camry and headed out towards her house. They lived about an hour away in a tiny little town that had barely anything, most of it adorned with back roads full of pine trees. It was on one of these back roads where Paulette's family had their 2-story farmhouse, which had a very cozy and homey feel to it. Although it was 2 stories, it felt cozy instead of roomy due to how much stuff was piled into it. Kinda reminded me of the Weasley house from Harry Potter, except appearing more stable and less likely to topple over. Vintage furniture mostly filled the house, but it also had a healthy mixture of newer items. The newer items mostly electronics. My favorite part of it was the huge flat-screen TV that sat above the beautiful ornate fireplace, seeming so out of place. Little swirls stood out on the fireplace to resemble little puffs of smoke standing out on the brick and somehow looking delicate, even though they were made of stone. A bookshelf with books stuffed into every inch sat beside the fireplace, looking like it was a couple of books away from toppling over. A very comfy and worn-down looking couch, paired with 2 matching chairs, sat in front of the fireplace, waiting for the visitors. We were the first 2 to sit down. We were quickly surrounded by Paulette's other family members that gradually showed up to the occasion. Soon the sitting area felt just as packed as the bookshelf. I felt very awkward and claustrophobic. "What's your name, sweetie?" an older woman asked me. I looked over in the direction of her voice and almost jumped a foot in my chair due to the strange appearance that she had. Her wildly curly hair fought against the bobby pins that she had holding it in, a strong smell of hairspray coming from it. Her pointy glasses reminded me of Roz from Monsters, Inc., although she had a rather sweet-sounding voice compared to that character. Her lipstick was the brightest shade of red I had ever seen, and it stained the filter of the cigarette that she had in her hand. Seeing how uncomfortable I was, Paulette reached over from her perch next to me and patted the woman's upper arm. "Auntie Jolene, this is my roommate Piper," she introduced. The woman nodded as she took a drag from her cigarette, making that weird scrunch-up expression with her face that all smokers do to not release smoke into someone else's face. "Honey, you're so tiny," she said. "You need to put some meat on your bones." "Don't worry," said Paulette. "I'm going to be making her plate for her." They both chuckled at this comment before switching to discussing some distant relative that they hadn't seen in forever. I kind of zoned out as they talked, trying to cover my nose from the smoke without being obvious and seeming rude. Thankfully, it wasn't long before Paulette's mom called us all into the dining room. I'd never been happier to get off of a couch. I thought the living room was adorable, but it was nothing compared to how phenomenal the dining room looked. The furniture in here was strictly vintage, mostly looking Victorian and intricate in its design. The table itself took up the entirety of the room, spanning from one end to the other. Its legs and edges looked hand-carved, with the legs specifically being made to look like a waterfall of roses was drizzling from them. The chairs matched that design, along with a fireplace at the opposite end of the room, A beautiful crystal chandelier set above the table, with crystals hanging down and twinkling as sunlight beams bounced off of them to the windows. Not only was the room beautiful, but the spread of food was just as amazing and smelled absolutely delicious. Dressing, chicken, dumplings, a huge ham, and a huge turkey were some of the dishes on the table, but they were far from it. The small table beside the fireplace overflowed with the desserts as well. Plates, cups, and silverware waited before each chair. A huge glass of lemonade waited to fill those cups. This room was truly something I had never seen besides similar ones that I had seen in movies. "Well, dig in, guys," announced Paulette's mom, and everyone quickly picked a chair. My mouth was already watering, and by the time Paulette's dad began cutting into the turkey, I felt like I was practically drooling. Excited chatter surrounded the table as everyone began filling their plates, and Paulette grabbed mine to begin filling it just as she said she would. One of Paulette's brothers, Jared, got up from the table and placed a record on a record player I hadn't noticed besides the dessert table. It crackled a bit as it spun around, but soon a mixture of instruments began to play, like a piano, clarinet, and violin. Soon a voice began to sound from the speakers as well. "Oh, you're my honey. Oh, you're my baby. Oh, you're my sweetie pie. My, don't you see, my sweet little treat, what you're doing to me." The lyrics were quite strange. I found myself distracted from my food as I continued to listen to the lyrics, staring at the record as it spun round and round. "Uncle Edgar used to think he could make it as a singer," said Paulette's dad as he noticed me staring, "but I think his sense of humor is just too strange." I didn't really know what he meant by that. No one decided to explain. So I left the conversation at that and turned back to my plate. "Wait, where's the special dish?" asked a young boy who I recognized from Paulette's family picture as her little cousin Richard. I glanced around the table, finally taking the time to get a good look at everyone that hadn't talked yet. There's only a few people from the picture book that I didn't see. The missing family members were quickly wiped from my mind as Paulette's mom appeared from the kitchen holding another huge dish, this one containing a plate of meat that I didn't really recognize. It took up the entire pan and seemed hard for her to carry. Everyone quickly scrambled to move the dishes that already were taking up the table so that she could set the heavy load down. "What's that?" I whispered to Paulette. "Oh, she stared. "Pig, I think," she shrugged, turning back over to the conversation that I had taken her from. Her response was weird to me, but I thought that it was probably just my nerves about the whole day that were getting to me. I looked back at the dish as her mom sliced into the meat, cutting thin strips off. Blood and other juices flowed from the cuts, filling up the bottom of the pan. I had never really been squeamish of blood. In fact, I've always loved my steaks a bit bloody, but my nerves were still making me feel weird. Is that how pig was supposed to be prepared? I began to feel bile come up my throat as the blood continued to pour. I tried to distract myself by eating again, but I couldn't ignore the feeling of goosebumps on my arm. I glanced around the table. I saw everyone else was perfectly fine, eating away or conversing with each other. Why was I the only one freaking out over a pig? You know the feeling like an answer to something is on the tip of your tongue, but you can't figure out what it is that your brain wants you to say. It's like the memory is scratching at your brain, trying to break free, but you don't know why you can't think of it. And that's how I was feeling right now, and it made a mixture with the feelings of anxiety. The mixture overwhelmed me. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths to try and calm myself. It's okay, I thought to myself. There's nothing wrong here. You're surrounded by nice people, and you have a delicious meal to finish off in front of you. I slowly opened my eyes, thinking that I had things under control now, until I realized my plate seemed a lot farther away than it should be. And then I remembered what my brain wanted to. The word on the tip of my tongue. "Oh no," I said out loud without meaning to. "Long pig." I heard Paulette ask what was wrong, but I was unable to respond. Everything seemed to fade out of existence besides me and the strange meat. I heard voices asking me if I was okay over and over, but I couldn't focus on them. The only sounds that were able to break free of the walls I suddenly had around me were the lyrics still playing from the record player. You look so scrumptious, oh, so delicious, my sweetie sweet pea. Come on over here, my sweet precious dear, and give me a little bite. I heard a muffled, do you want to go to the bathroom? Come from beside me. I was unable to respond, though, and a moment later I felt arms wrap around me and gently lift me, and I was practically carried out of the room, my feet somehow still able to operate. I felt like I was floating. Everything seemed dim. The sunlight there were moments before now sucked out. It felt like a blur, but I was brought into a tiny bathroom and sat on the closest toilet. We sat there for a few minutes. Me on the toilet and the person on the floor, until I finally calmed down enough for the world to come back into focus. I realized it was Paulette sitting on the floor in front of me, with her legs crossed, patiently waiting for me to be able to communicate again. Hey, you okay? She asked in a soft voice. I nodded. Thank you. It's no biggie, she reassured. What made it happen anyway? I thought about my response for a while, debating if I should make something up or not, because strange meat sounded like a silly reason to have a panic attack. Why would they be eating long pig? Would she even know what that was if I told her? It took a while before I decided to tell her the truth. Not the long pig part, but the rest of it. The meat gave me a weird vibe, I responded. The pig? She asked. I nodded, and she giggled. Oh, that's okay. I promise it was just pig. Why did it freak you out? I shrugged. I don't know. Just a weird vibe. She nodded as well, and stood up from her position on the floor. Are you okay enough to go back out there now? I think I'm gonna sit here for a bit. She nodded once more before exiting, slowly closing the door behind her. It was a few minutes before I got up from the toilet. I figured I'd been in there long enough, so I splashed some water on my face before taking a few deep breaths and exiting the bathroom as well. Walking down the tiny hallway and out of the living room, I was able to notice even more details I loved about the house. The mishmash of recent and vintage framed photos on the walls, the crazy pattern wallpaper, a random pile of shoes stashed around the front door. It all seemed so homey, something that I had never had the privilege to fully experience firsthand. It made me feel safe. Even though I felt safe, old habits die hard, so when I rounded the corner to the other hall, I paused in my tracks, deciding to eavesdrop for a bit on the conversation to see how much I had embarrassed myself. You didn't tell us the one you were bringing was loony, I heard Aunt Jolene say. That made me frown, shocked that my suspicions had been true. They all seemed so friendly and inviting. And she's skinny as all get out, I heard Jared say. Shh, Paulette hushed them. You guys are just being way too loud. She was the best thing I could get. That comment confused me. What did she mean by that? Did she not actually like me? Did she view me as a bad friend? Last year you got a chubby one, though, whined Richard. Shut up, Richard, Whisper shouted Paulette. She'll taste just fine. I don't know about that, Polly, said Paulette's dad. The fatty ones always have more flavor. My eyes grew wide as I realized exactly what they were talking about. Uncle Edgar's weird song started playing in my head like a cruel serenade, mixing with the memory I had over and over. And why did she say long pig? Asked Paulette's mom, reading my mind. Did she know what the meat was? No, Paulette said. She said the meat gave her a weird feeling, but I don't think she knew what it was. Well, we better get started before she does find out. I don't even know who said that comment. All I know is I sprinted full force to the front door. I didn't bother pulling my shoes on because I could already hear them discussing what that sound was from the dining room. I jerked on the door handle to no avail. I did the next best thing, which was to wrap my hand up in the white curtain decorating the window beside the door and smash my fist through the glass until it broke. I got rid of the glass shards the best I could before hopping through. But even if I was cut, there was too much adrenaline pumping through my body to feel any pain. I didn't feel the pain in my lungs as I sprinted in the cold air, or the pokey branches on the ground either. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew it had to be somewhere far from them. It was that moment that a ray of sunshine seemed to glide through the trees surrounding their front yard, seemingly lighting up an escape route for me. A car was at the end of the route, one of the many parked ones owned by the family members on the edge of the yard. I ran to it, hoping against all hope that one of them had been stupid enough to leave their car unlocked. I tried out 3 doors with no luck. I began panicking as I heard footsteps approaching, but I kept trying cards. I approached Paulette's car and looked into the interior, rushing as I could hear the person getting closer. The moment I heard Paulette scream my name as she approached, it dawned on me. She had a push-to-start car, and I hadn't seen her take her keys out of her sweater pocket since we got here. I unlocked the car and hopped into the driver's seat. In seconds, having the car started and already backing up to only a few more. Paulette chased after me as the car moved, shouting something I couldn't hear. I didn't let it faze me, though. Placing all of my focus on getting the hell out of there, I quickly whipped the car around and then zoomed down the long driveway, trying to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. I didn't have enough service to GPS my way out, so I had to go off memory. Paulette's family tried to follow me, but with the number of twists and turns I was making out of confusion, they had trouble staying on my trail. Seeing their cars pop up randomly again and again still frightened me, and one time they even tried to ram Paulette's car, but by luck, I made it to safety back to the town. Their cars quickly disappeared, but I had no idea where. I didn't really care at that point. As long as they weren't still chasing me, I was fine. I quickly found the police station. I tried to file a report. I say tried because I noticed the police officers were acting very strange when I explained where the house was. I finally asked what the problem was after they kept whispering and giving each other confused looks. "No one's lived in that house for 4 years," said one of the officers. "That's not true. Her whole family does. I saw them." But it was true. When we went back to the house, they were gone. Along with a few of the newer items, the house was never theirs. It was just one that they had been lucky enough to find to set up shop in. It was owned by a wealthy family, one they had bought to restore as a possible vacation home, but they never really checked on it because it was so far out of the country, and they figured no one could find it. Boy, were they wrong. And I later found out that Paulette wasn't her real name. I assumed the same for all the rest of them. The FBI told me they had actually been on the hunt for them for a while, but with the constant name changes and them moving around so frequently, they could never stay on top of it. Paulette and her brother were the bait. They got to know people that became close with them so they could bring them back home, particularly targeting people like me who had no one else. I guess we'd be more likely to be forgotten about. Missing persons swept under the rug. The FBI didn't have a definite number on how many missing persons cases were their victims, but with the way they acted when they discussed it, it seemed to be a very high number. I was lucky to not be added to that list. When I managed to get back to the dorm, Paulette's room had been cleaned out. The only thing she had left was Uncle Edgar's record and a picture of us together that we had taken when we first met, both of which she had placed on my desk. When I flipped the picture over, I saw 2 sentences scribbled on it in Paulette's handwriting. "You were right. The meat was human." We're coming around the bend to holidays, which means that I'm going to tell you guys about a book. Actually, I'm going to tell you guys about 2 books. The Creepypasta Collection, Volume 1 and Volume 2. It's available on Amazon right now. You can find a link to it in the description down below, and they are books that are curated by me. They're a couple years old, but recently one of them got published in Japanese, which is interesting. I don't think you can buy it, but, I mean, if you're in Japan and you see it, I hope you think. And as always, I want to give a big thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. That includes everybody who's been waiting for me to update my Patreon, and I thank you all so much for being so patient with me. But especially, I want to give a thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Jakob Fenske, Stephanie Butler, Bobby Karman, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, Tristain Pelton, AcidSystem, Adam Gerecke, Aeryn Stormcrow, Aika Limchoc, Amber Clark, Angelus, Atomaurus, Bastion Beefcake, Blue the Enigma, Brayden Morris, Broken Beast 320, Captain Scurvy, Caspian, ChellyJay, CoryxKenshin, Cronut 509, Crusader Chocobo, Cryptic Nightmares, Curse Pox Primarch, Dakota Lane Whetstone, Daniel Polson, Darth Miver, Deleted Account, Dirt Diver 030, M, Esteban, Fester's Lampshade, Freddy Krueger, Gorag Trimagazine, Grand Moth the Milky, Hades' Nephew, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Harley, Himbo Jerry, Horseman Sect Time, Insanity Gamer X, Jay Cairns, Jesus Cornell, Jordan Humble, Justin LaFontaine, Kaylee Ambrose, Kiri the Sloth, Crazy Kid, Cryolinian, Lambda M98, Lisa Cottrell, Little Crow, Lord Life's Best, Lupita Galvin, Love You Eminem, Matt Bach, Melted Lake, Michael Allen Jr. Brashears, Mike, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Nate Cull, Nico Kaio, Psychomel, Red Shadowcat, Rob Like Sharp Things, Samahai, Sashi Suzaku, Seclude, Stricken, Tali Sue, Tater Chip, That Creepy Chick, The Ginger Bros, Turtle Man, Voice of Sand, William King, Xavier and Cheyenne, Yargol, and Zachary Graphius. If you would like to join this list of names that I horribly mispronounce, then please head over to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, or you can always check out the names in the description down below, and I appreciate it infinitely. So thank you all on Patreon, thank you all so much, and to everyone, sweet dreams.